Next slide, please. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining, everyone, and thank you for your patience. We did have a little bit of a technical difficulty today, but we're going to go ahead and have our special guest through our telephone connection, which is Plan B. So this is the next installment in our Frontline Leadership Professional Development Guest Speaker Series. Next slide, please. And this is just a brief montage of, oh, excuse me, I'm a slide prior, excuse me. This is a brief montage of our veterans group here at Panasonic Avionics. And traditionally, I would go ahead and go through long introductions of our team members and our mission, but in the sake of time today, I'm going to skip forward through that. So we'll go ahead to the next slide, please. Next slide. And next slide, please.
No.
There you go. Okay, perfect. So we're going to go ahead and jump forward today to introducing our special guest. So I'll start with, my name is Cherie Johnston. I'm the president of the Veterans Impact Group here at Panasonic. And additionally, I had her jump quickly through all the different leaders that I would traditionally thank, but I'm going to move directly into our guest today. And that is Lieutenant Colonel Walter Fuss. Walter Fuss is a native of New Jersey. He later graduated from Ursinus College in Pennsylvania in 1971. Following college, Lieutenant Colonel Fuss entered the United States Air Force, and he graduated from Air Force pilot training in 1972. Those first 10 years of military service, he trained on the K-135 Stratotanker, which he then flew for 10 years for the Strategic Air Command. He'd later become an instructor on this same aircraft as Chief of Training for the 22nd Bomb Aircraft Wing at March Air Force Base, which is in California. In 1973, the Lieutenant Colonel moved over to air refueling sorties during the Yom Kippur War in the Middle East. By 1982, following 10 years on active duty, he then transferred to the C-141B Reserve Unit at Norton Air Force Base, again in California. In 1983, the Lieutenant Colonel was hired by a new startup airline named Jet America in Long Beach, California, where he would become captain on an MD-80 aircraft. In 1986, this new airline was purchased by the more familiar name of Alaska Airlines. In 1990, when Iraq invaded Kuwait, Walter's reserve unit activated for nearly a year. He then served as an aircraft commander piloting the C-141B during Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Ultimately, Lieutenant Colonel Fuss retired from the Air Force in 1992. On the commercial side of his career, based out of Los Angeles International Airport, the Lieutenant Colonel flew with Alaska Airlines until his retirement in 2014, logging a phenomenal over 30,000 flying hours. Next slide, please. So today's topic is entitled A Pilot's Journey from Military to Commercial Aviation. Next slide, please. And again, everyone, thank you for your patience. And without any further ado at all, I'm going to turn it over to the Lieutenant Colonel via telephone. Lieutenant Colonel, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Cherie. I'm glad to be here, and I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, we can.
Because I have the phone and the speaker on.
Yes, the audience is saying they can hear you. Please go ahead.
Oh, okay, very good. So what my career was different, basically, was I was lucky enough to fly straight through for 42 years.
Cherie, I think you muted yourself.
I was lucky to fly 20 years, 10 active, 10 reserve in the Air Force, and retired with rank. Just to overview that the aviation community, both airline and military, is not well known by the public. Starting from World War II, 80% roughly of all airline pilots in the U.S. were ex-military pilots. And the Korean War added to that, so the Vietnam War. And for what it's worth, I just missed the Vietnam War. I graduated December 1972. So basically, the airline industry is just chock full of military. Today, that percent is way lower now. It's roughly 50% or maybe even less. And the reason being, they added a 10-year commitment to go into pilot training. And I just want to make you all aware of the expense involved. Undergraduate pilot training today costs over about $3 million. A fighter pilot today costs over $10 million to train. So you're basically asking the government to give me that free education, and in return, you're going to give them 10 years. So just give you a heads up on what's involved here. Basically, obviously, to become a pilot is very competitive, especially today. However, when I went through, it was not competitive. The Vietnam War was going on. They needed pilots. So if you wore glasses, you were automatically excluded. And that may even be true today. I'm not sure. So, my background, I come from a lower middle class family, born in Newark, raised in Cranford, New Jersey, right outside of Newark, New York area. Grew up in a 900 square feet, 2-bedroom duplex with 4 siblings, including myself, and got B's and C's in high school. Was very lucky in that the graduating class of 1967 from Cranford High School. I was not college material, had no money. And one day the head of the phys ed department called me into his office, and he asked me what I was going to do after college. And by the way, I also had extremely low SAT scores. So I've always been on the bottom working my way up. And one thing I was, though, I didn't mention, I was a track star, although not a champion. Captain of the track team, cross country, have a few state medals, county medals, but low grades and low SAT scores. So anyway, Stan Grayson was his name. He says, my brother's a track coach at a little college called Ursinus in Pennsylvania. And he handed me an application, and he said, fill it out. And basically, I did. And I got a track scholarship, despite my low grades. And Ursinus is key to my career, because that's where I met my wife, Carol. She was 1 year, I was a senior, she was a junior. And we dated through college. And then when I graduated college, in 1969, 1 year prior, they had a draft lottery number. That when you graduated college and lost your deferment, if you had a low number, you were going to be drafted unless you enlisted or did something else. So we could do. And that's what I did. And then there was a recruiter in one of the lounges that really planted the seed for me. He was a Marine pilot with his gold wings and his dress blues, looking sharp and talk tough. And he kind of told me, you're about to go to Vietnam in the jungles unless you become an officer and a pilot maybe. And that just planted the seed. I didn't really want to be a pilot. Never been in an airplane, by the way. Never even cared about an airplane. And then, but the seed he planted was, I talked to an Air Force recruiter, and I said, well, I'm going to have a degree. How about I can go to officer school? Well, at that time, both the Navy and the Air Force would not recruit you out of college to be an officer unless you were in the pipeline for pilot training or navigator training. That means you have to pass the physical and pass the written test, which wasn't that hard. So I did that, and I got in the pipeline. I went to officer training school in Lackland, Texas, San Antonio. Barely made it through there, did not fit in. with all these A-type personalities that wanted to be pilots. And I did not want to. Well, I've never been in an airplane. It was dangerous. I really didn't care for it. But I was told that if you wash out of pilot training, well, you're still an officer, and then you'll get a job and a career. And that was just fine with me. And I struggled in pilot training. Carol came to visit me when she graduated, got a little apartment. That motivated me a little bit more. We were not married at this time. And I persevered and basically got my wings, flying the T-38, a little supersonic white jet. By the way, it was in the movie Top Gun. It was the one that Maverick and Goose took a picture of. And then I flew the KC-135 tanker. And then right after Carol pinned my wings on, we drove up to Connecticut and got married in one of the smallest weddings you can imagine, reception being in her house in a severe ice storm. So we were off to our new life, and I qualified in the KC-135, became an instructor in it. Like Cherie said, I flew in. The first thing I did in 1973 was the Yom Kippur War. And if you remember, in that war, it was Israel. It was a surprise attack across the Suez Canal and from the north. And Israel lost a lot of fighters really quick and tanks. And this was a massive airlift called Operation Nickel Grass. And I was the tanker part of it, ferrying basically A4 fighters down the Mediterranean and over the Atlantic. So I got my feet wet early, got some good experience, became an instructor, got some recognition, but made a tough decision at the 10-year point to get off active duty. Because in March Air Force Base, there was a lot of reserve units. There were tanker units, which I was assured to get in. And I chose the 141, which I was not qualified in. And now I'm asking the government to send me to school again after I just quit. And they did. And I got in the unit. Norton Air Force Base, by the way, is only 15 miles from my house. But you kind of see how my luck is really holding up here. I'm not having to move anywhere or chase a job. And of course, my airline job with Jet America, when I got out of training in the 141, was here too, Long Beach, California. And then with the merger with Alaska Airlines, I kept the captain seat. So I literally spent an entire career as an airline captain, and that's unbelievably rare. That means you're in charge all the time. And then I got lucky again. Get this. The mandatory retirement age for airline pilots was age 60. And then right about the time, around 2009, they raised it to 65. Said, hey, Walt, you got 5 more years as a senior captain flying to Hawaii, having your cake and eat it too. So the big deal about being a senior captain in the airlines, or senior first officer, or senior flight attendant, is you get to choose your routes and your days off. And back then, you rarely flew more than, or I did, 14 days a month, 14, 15. So you had half the month off. And you could actually choose which days you get off, and you can get them off in a row. So it's a very nice lifestyle. And of course, Carol was a 30-year teacher and retired. And we only had one son, Michael, who's now in his late 40s. The reason we had a small family, because obviously you can see what's building up here. I'm gone all the time. And that period of 1982 to 92 with the reserves and airline, I was gone a lot. However, things got better and better, and prior and after I had a lot of time off. So we were lucky to do a lot of cruises, and Carol and I became scuba divers, and that was our hobby. You can even scuba dive off cruise ships as part of the shore excursion. And here in Southern California, with our home. And I'm currently a volunteer at the Air Force Museum as a docent. And that's how I met Cherie. She was on one of my tours. Cost her $8, by the way. If you want to hear my stories, you got to pay for it. So, but Cherie gave me a really nice compliment. That's the one I like the most. They say you're a good presenter. In other words, you're a good tour guide. You know, it's no big deal when I flew these planes to know about them, but the fact that you enjoyed it makes a difference to me. So thank you, Cherie, for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll leave it to questions. How about that?
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so I definitely have a few pre-planned questions for you, and I'm going to go ahead and ask everyone on the line. If you want to just go ahead and put your questions in the chat, I'll dive into those as well. And just thank you for sharing with us today regarding your kind of unique and fascinating career journey. And I know there's so much more we haven't touched on yet. So when we originally spoke, I was just astonished to learn how many different U.S. military conflicts that you actually did participate in. When you first set out in your career, did you imagine it would last for so long? I mean, literally decades, and involve such a wide scope of U.S. military activities and engagements.
Well, I think I answered that. This whole thing surprised me. And I look back on all the luck points that I had, and it kind of scares me, and how, you know, if any one of these little things didn't work, then that would have been different. So no, I was totally overwhelmed, but I adapted to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you also had served not just, as I mentioned, in the bio and Desert Storm, but you had also been able to go to Panama, I thought you said, and you had also been able to go to a few other international destinations, if you will.
Well, yeah, that's correct. U.S. military, everything that happens, even when I got Osama bin Laden, involves airlift and air refueling. And this is not widely known. Basically, nothing happens without air refueling for the U.S. military. Right now, as we speak, every ocean in the world has air refueling tankers with fighters under their wing. They're transporting them to maintenance bases, and we're moving airplanes. We're always moving airplanes, even today. And of course, the Middle East is on fire. Ukraine. So NATO tankers are active, and basically it allows planes to stay orbiting, like the AWACS. They stay up there for 24 hours plus, and everything is done with air refueling. So you get involved with it. Of course, Panama, Operation Just Cause in 1990, we operated out of MacDill, and I was in the 141 at that time, and we were basically flying troops back and forth. So yeah, you have a little piece of all the stuff that goes on. Probably the most interesting thing I got involved in. A lot of this is I can't talk about. Remember the Iranian hostage raid in 1980? Remember when that failed under President Carter?
Yes, sir.
So those planes had to get there, or basically I refueled some AC-130 gunships to bring them through Diego Garcia. But so you get a little bit of everything, and that's been great. And actually, quite frankly, airlift and air refueling has been very safe. Not one tanker was shot down in Vietnam or since. So it's a very safe operation for the airlift.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, and we'll have a photo of that in a moment that we'll be able to share. Another key attribute I noted about you immediately, just when we met, was just the plethora of knowledge you demonstrated regarding multiple military and commercial aircraft. Although it may be challenging for you to identify, can you point to which personal skill set you believe that you possess that just allowed you, especially as you reference with not the greatest grades, to have so much adaptability and just quickly learning, varying complex technologies that you interacted with?
Well, it's all based on the way you were instructed. It's pattern recognition. It's called a building block of learning. You start out small, you solo an airplane, and you get more complicated, and your brain, takes it all in. And air simulators, that's what they do very well today, and they're very realistic. You get to practice emergency procedures. Me personally, well, I did get low grades. I kind of have a photographic mind, so I can kind of recall things by recalling the picture. In other words, your brain takes a picture of everything you're seeing, and if you can recall it, get it out of there, then you can literally just look at it. And while it's not organized with me, I think it's helping me a lot.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a skill I don't think everybody has, but maybe with that advice, they could potentially develop towards that, over the longer term of learning. And the next question, please. So for our younger viewers today who were not alive during the Cold War era, will you explain what the Strategic Air Command was exactly and part of its mission that engaged your career personally?
Okay. Cold War started in 1949, the year I was born, and it ended in 1990. And what that was after World War II, the Soviet Union and the United States were in an arms race of nuclear strategic weapons. And we had to protect each other from a sneak attack. Now, when I grew up in the 60s in grammar school, the early 60s in particular, we had duck and cover drills in school where not only a fire bell, but a siren went off and you went in the halls or to try to, as if that's going to protect you from a nuclear bomb. But we did it anyway. They also advertised on TV, along with cigarettes, bomb shelters. And, who has the nicest bomb shelter on the block? So we took it seriously, a sneak attack. We had an Air Defense Command, and the Strategic Air Command was part of the Air Force Command that B-52 bombers, the Minuteman II, our ICBMs, and our air refueling tankers, because they were tied to the nuclear bombers for fuel for that alert mission. And what we did was these crews were on alert. And might also add that the Navy has their submarines on alert with sea-launched ballistic missiles. It's called a triad. Because of the timing of these weapons, an enemy would realize that if you tried to attack us with nuclear weapons, that you will be destroyed. And we would too. And that's called MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction. And that was the strategy back then to prevent World War III. Korea was a proxy war designed to prevent World War III. So was Vietnam. And we're going through that again today, even though the Cold War ended. The threat being like in Ukraine, to prevent another nuclear war. You see that on the news all the time. And the Strategic Air Command is the command that controls those nuclear weapons. And you ever hear of the president's football? Wherever he goes, those are nuclear codes and operation procedures for if something happens, because only the president can authorize the use of a nuclear weapon through those codes. I recommend you to watch the movie Dr. Strangelove. It's one of the top 10 movies of all time. It's from 1964. It will show you the bomber alert. It will show you an air refueling. It's a lot of people got in trouble over that movie because all this stuff is top secret. And they made a movie out of it, and it was accurate. And they even included the cockpit of the B-52, which was classified at the time. And the way they did that, by the way, the producer went into a simulator and from memory, he reproduced it. It wasn't that accurate, but it was good enough for the movie. So I recommend you see that movie and you'll really see what it was all about. It was an airborne alert. And we pulled alert by our airplanes for 1 week out of 3, simulating a nuclear attack. And we would have exercises where we would start the engines and roll down the runway. And we would be timed. We had to have the plane off within 15 minutes. And of course, the ICBMs are in they're under Strategic Air Command also. That's the push buttons, right? Push the button. And you've heard that phrase. By the way, the Cold War ended in 1990. People aren't aware. Do you know that our ICBMs have always been on alert, even today, and our submarines, even today? Only thing that came down was the bomber alert. However, they could be brought up tomorrow. If something really got tense, we would go right back to that alert status today. So does that answer your question, you think?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a topic that many of us as Americans just really don't know too much about, and haven't maybe spoke with someone who was involved with that. So next question, throughout your career, you flew and landed in countless different nations. Collectively, how many nations do you believe that your aviation career took you to land in within the world?
Yeah, I've been asked this a lot, like how many miles you think you flew? I about 34 countries. And I add to that, in the 141 before Desert Storm, our primary responsibility was the Pacific. And Hawaii, Wake Island, Midway, Kwajalein. I've been to Iwo Jima, Okinawa, all the Pacific, so I include those.
Wow.
I've been over the North Pole too.
Oh, wow.
So,
excellent. And one of my questions, ironically, was a question from our audience as well. What was the longest flight that you undertook? And also, can you share with us its purpose and like the time period when that occurred in your career?
yes. So the C-141 is air refueling. So we were qualified to do that. If you fly a big airplane like a B-52 and you get air refueled, you can literally fly around the world without stopping. It's not that, you know what I mean? You can go forever. Mm-hmm. So, and these planes have bunk, so that's really doesn't really count. Flight without an air refueling was from here, Southern California, north to Zaragoza, Spain. And that was based on a very light load. It was after Desert Storm, after the war had ended, and they needed to get the airplane from the West Coast back into the system. The system had been Europe, and Zaragoza was a fighter base. That's where they deployed to the Middle East and back. So our job was basically, we were very light, no cargo, so we could immediately go to 41,000 feet where you burn way less fuel, and a little over 12 hours.
Oh, wow.
I also flew from the west coast of Japan nonstop from Travis, and close to 12 hours, also 11.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can't imagine that. That's interesting. So just last but not least on the pre-planned questions, and we have a few questions from our audience, is the photographs that we want to share. And I know that you're on the cell phone with us because we had some technology difficulty. So I'm just going to tell you specifically what we're verbally looking at. So next slide, please.
Okay.
And so in this particular image, we are seeing an actual tanker refuel that you had been speaking to. And this one's signed by someone, and it says February 7th, 1978. So could you share with us what that was?
Yes. And I love that picture. It's on my wall. That's obviously a scan. That was a fighter drag, and I am actually in the left seat of that KC-135. That's me, taken by another F-15. We were ferrying two F-15s to Europe. I can't even remember where, through the Azores. And we gave them more fuel, and we helped them out. Something like that. Fighters always want more fuel than you can give them. And he just asked, where we were, and he gave us 4 pictures, one for each of us. Mm-hmm. And I cherish that. That's a cool picture.
That is a really cool picture. Absolutely love it. Next slide, please. And so in this particular picture, we're looking at yourself and a group of people in civilian clothing, but we're in front of the pyramids.
Right. That's one of our Desert Storm crews. I was the aircraft commander, and I titled that, It Wasn't All Work and No Play. So we laid over in Egypt. Been to Egypt several times, and sometimes you're lucky enough to get a few days off. And we visited the pyramids, actually went inside of them. And the way we got there, you'll notice the pyramids are pretty far behind us, by horseback. We rented a bunch of Arabian horses with a guide, and that's the best way to see the pyramids.
Oh, wow. Yeah, absolutely. That's excellent. So next slide, please. And in this particular one, you're actually standing alone, solo, in a flight suit on a tarmac in front of a very large aircraft.
Right, that's the C-141. That's my airplane. That's Prince Sultan Air Base. If you look in the back, it looks like sandy beach. See the sand?
Yes.
That's Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow.
Prince Sultan was the largest fighter base of Desert Storm. And basically, this was part of the buildup. Remember, we flew supplies and weapons over there prior to the actual war.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is great photo too, because it gives us really a good scope of the size of that aircraft and yourself in contrast to it. That's a pretty big plane.
It's not as big as the current C-17 or the C-5. Those are bigger, but
Oh, wow.
it's big enough. It's a good size.
Okay. So next slide, please. Now we're inside of an aircraft holding bay, and we're looking at a lot of, I'm not sure if these are soldiers or Marines in camis, which branch and where are we headed?
Okay, say that again. Is this the back of the cargo area?
Yes, sir.
With troops?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This was a flight from Frankfurt, Germany to McGuire in New Jersey. Or started and ended within a few days. And then we started flying troops home. And when we flew them, it was ceremonial because the families were told to meet the plane. And I would taxi the big jet in front of the family. And sometimes there was a band. And it was very exciting. Something that didn't happen to our troops in Vietnam. But it was a homecoming, and there's actually two pictures there. And that was one of the homecomings.
Sure.
And the troops in the back. And then you'll see the other picture of the families waiting for them.
Yeah, I think if you want to go to next slide, please. That's our next photograph we're going to speak to here is, and the next slide, please. We've got one more. Here we go. So in this particular photo, exactly, we've got the families reuniting. We've got a film crew, and he's got the camera, which definitely looks like it's 1990s. He's got it on his shoulder. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, so this was an action.
And that one was, there was two of them. The Patrick Air Force Base in Florida.
Oh, okay.
And that was a smaller one. That's where the families hugging each other.
Yeah. Really, really fascinating part of history. I had a chance to speak with one of our other guests who had served on the ground during Desert Storm in private and really learned a lot of stuff I didn't understand. I think I was growing up in high school during this period, and it was really the dawn of CNN, where we were able to get that live kind of feed of what was going on. So it was something I remember from that lens, but really did not remember our military having so much involvement or being on the ground that long. So it's really great that you were able to participate on this really exciting side of it, as well as the homecomings. Next slide, please. And so for this final slide that we're going to look at, and then we're going to move into our audience questions, is you are scuba diving, and I believe that is your beautiful wife, Carol, scuba diving. And is that a wreck that she's in?
Well, yes, there's two wrecks. One was I'm in front of a hooker in Bonaire. It was taken right before the pandemic. And then that's Carol in a wreck in Roatan, Honduras.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this,
Yeah.
This seems like more than just a hobby. That's a pretty intense scuba diving.
Well, we hooked up with some big time divers here in Southern California that have become close friends. Yes, I think we got our first lesson in 2006, and then we did trips with them. And the guy that owns this, Tony Wiley, he's probably got more dives than any other human being. So we hooked up with some nice people, and got pretty good at it. Carol likes it a lot more than me, and I would recommend to all of you listening in, especially for a married couple. Both like that kind of thing. Both get certified. Your vacation options will multiply on cruises, and there's so many, and a reasonable price. So many beautiful places that you can dive with, and it's really recommended. Yeah. Especially for a couple. It's been great for us.
Yeah, this is just, it's a really, it's such a sentimental, and both of my parents, actually, my mother and my father were scuba divers. My father was a master diver. And like you said, my mother was as well and have some photographs, of them diving, and probably like you do as well. It just looks like some really incredible places. Is like you would think to maybe see Honduras, but you're seeing it underwater. This is really special. Okay, so jumping over to our first question we have from Grace, and she says, Lieutenant Colonel said that pilot school was challenging. What changed during schooling where he knew that he had something? Okay, so like your aha moment specifically, what changed where you knew that this was the right pathway?
Well, originally, it was a thorn in my side because once I became a lieutenant, I felt like I accomplished my goal, doing something about the military. And I didn't think I would, or believe that I would make it through pilot training, because I just, it was dangerous, and I didn't think I could take it or I could do it. And I actually struggled through the T-37 first jet phase. I had a bad instructor, what I know now, and I almost washed out. I graduated the bottom of my class, and then a few things came together. And the T-38 phase, I found that I had a really good instrument cross check, and I was able to apply formation pretty good. And others struggle at that. So once you get a little positive feedback, you can what it took for me. And then later on with these other airplanes, I got more positive feedback. And hey, you're pretty good at this and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's just incredible. Such a great lesson for all of us that you didn't give up. I may not have been an expert at this immediately, but it didn't mean it wasn't the right thing for you to pursue.
Right. And of course, my was now, let's face your sweetheart and your girlfriend, you're in love with her, and, she's watching you fly a supersonic jet, a little ego involved with that, and that helped.
Little motivation. That's great. So from Ryan, he says, thank you for your service. I was wondering if you have any advice based on your military experience for employees today in the corporate world to enhance just internal collaboration. And I think that would probably include like team building.
Okay. The aircraft commander of a military plane has a crew. A captain on an airliner has a crew, flight attendants and a first officer. And of course, co-pilot is called it in the military. So by definition, you are a leader, and you're a leader that has to perform, unlike a lot of other endeavors. In other words, you have to be able to do it yourself, land in that big crosswind and do it. And if you have trouble, you're going to get a reputation and your leadership is going to falter. So you have to perform when you do this. This is the difference between you don't order other people to do it. You have to do it yourself with help. So you're in command of a crew, and that means you have to use your crew, and that's team building. The ones that are not successful are tyrants. In other words, I want to do everything myself and don't talk to me unless I ask you of them. They don't last very long. And in fact, early on in the years, captains were tyrants, especially in the 60s. And it was a tense cockpit. And that led to fatal accidents. In the 60s, we had accidents every other month and a lot of these accidents were caused because of bad leadership, pilot error. That answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we have time just for one more question, but I do want to get this one in. So Eric is asking, did you have a favorite plane that you flew?
Well, obviously the T-38. I wasn't a trained fighter pilot, but it is a supersonic jet. I actually flew it twice. When I was on a Staff Air March, I got to fly it a little bit again. All your astronaut pilots fly it. They have NASA T-38s, and the single seat version is a fighter still being flown by some countries today. So it's fast. Got flames come out the back on takeoff. You've seen it. There it comes. So yeah. I did like the MD-80, by the way. The airline flew that for 15 years. That's the one with the engines in the back, because it was a good ride and very quiet.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I had a colleague here at Panasonic who had actually in a prior life worked on those aircraft. So that's really great to hear. So I know we're out of time, but next slide, please. I do want to say, Lieutenant Colonel Fuss, thank you so much on behalf of everyone here at Panasonic. Just a tremendous thank you for joining us today and for your decades of service to our nation's defense. I just want to give you one moment to see if you have any closing thoughts.
Oh, no, thank you. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I want to thank Ethan. He's in Newark, New Jersey. I talked to him a little bit.
Yeah, we had such a great yeah, we had a great discussion in preparation to this with Lieutenant Colonel having grown up in New Jersey, and we have Panasonic North America, our production team there. So that was a really great to hear. But no, thank you again so very much. We really appreciate your joining. Next slide, please. And again, I'll just quickly throw this out there. If you're interested in joining our Veterans Impact Group here at Panasonic, just go ahead and send us an email. Next slide, please. And I always throw in this particular slide. It is our Veterans Crisis Line at the VA. You can dial 988 and then you can press 1. If you don't need this, please share it with your friends, your family members, or your colleagues to spread the word. Next slide, please. And on that note, I will wish everyone a wonderful day. Thank you again for joining us. And until next time, take care. Have a great week. Bye-bye.